One day I went to my friend's house for her virgin celebration. I don't really know what that's about, but her parents have this tradition of throwing a virgin celebration if their daughter is a virgin for a whole year. Anyway, so her parents are throwing a party for her virgin celebration, and I wanted to give my friend a surprise where I pop out from under the bed with a cake. Long story short, a couple hours pass by, the party starts, I go under her bed, I start prepping for the surprise, and then I see 2 people enter the room from under the bed. I saw 4 shoes. So at this point, there was 2 people in the room, keep in mind. So like 10 minutes pass by, and then I hear clapping, bitch. My dumbass thought they were like singing happy birthday, or maybe they were celebrating for something. So I jump out from under the bed, and guess what I see? Oh my god.
This is the best part, bitch!
I see my friend getting railed by her cousin. I didn't know what to say, so I looked at his peepee and I said, "It's so small. We're not friends anymore." So after all of this sus stuff starts happening, I decided to unblock the number that knew all of my personal information, and I texted them because if it wasn't my friends pranking me, it was probably them since they now had my address and knew everything about me. I unblocked the number and I texted them and I told them, "What's your problem? What do you want with me? Why do you even have my personal records?" I answered in like a second, which was really weird because that never happens to me, but okay. So the number answered and they basically told me they wanted $50,000 in return or else they will sell my identity and I will no longer be anyone in this world. So keep in mind, the way that this account tracked me down was that they tagged me in a photo and I accidentally clicked the link in their profile. So I went back to their profile and their profile picture was a picture of me that I've never posted anywhere. So at this point, I was very freaking scared and I told my parents and they told the cops and the FBI. So I get in the Uber and I did not see Emma at first, but then she popped up right after I put my seatbelt and we went on the road. Emma then locked all the doors, broke my phone. I couldn't really do anything because at this point I was really, really weak from what she had put in my drink and started spraying me with pepper spray, which hurt really bad. At this point, I'm basically weak. I'm like fainting every second and I have pepper spray everywhere. I don't have my phone. And Emma starts laughing at me.
This is the best part.
So she ends up dropping me off at an alley in the middle of nowhere that was like 2 hours from my house. I found this out because someone ended up driving by the alley and they asked me if I needed help and then they helped me and I contacted my parents and the police. Obviously the police got Emma, but I am not allowed to say more about Emma other than this story. But yeah, don't meet up with your bullies, or at least the crazy ones.
Storytime about the ghost that follows me. When I was in my teens, my cousin and best friend made a Ouija board. I was skeptical whether it worked or not, but agreed to try it out with her. We get everything set up and my cousin starts asking the board questions. It starts answering and saying weird things that my cousin didn't even know about my life. Some of my deepest and darkest secrets were coming out of that thing. I started to panic and I told my cousin that I wanted to stop. We said our goodbyes and closed it up. I thought that was the end of it, but that night, we started hearing footsteps in her room. This was something that neither of us had experienced in that room ever. When I went home, the footsteps followed me and continued to happen in my childhood home. When I told my parents, my dad chalked it up to the floor settling after we laid new flooring in the previous years. Then we moved into a new home that had been converted from a garage to a business to a home by my family. I mention this because 1, no one had clearly ever lived there, and 2, the floors under the carpet and laminate were cement. However, the laminate would still creak as if a full-grown adult was walking on it. Shortly after, I moved into my ex's apartment and same thing. The footsteps again, but this time, shadows started appearing. It had gotten so bad that my best friend and roommate, who's a major skeptic, didn't want to be there alone. I didn't think it could get any worse, but it did. I eventually moved out of the apartment. I moved in with my mother and sister in a different city. Her duplex went from no paranormal activity to an insane amount in just a few days. They would feel hot breaths on their face at night when they slept. My aunt started hearing giggling in a different room when she was alone, and I even heard someone say in an eerily tone, "Mommy," at 3 a.m. once. However, the craziest part is that the duplex mysteriously caught fire. When the fire department came and did their investigation, they had no explanation as to how the fire started or what caused it. After that, we moved into a new modular home who only had one previous owner. The footsteps started again. I found a pretty doll at an antique store and eventually the doll started to move around on its own. There were times I caught it wave at me or move its head. It got to the point that I had to hide it away because it moved so much and it scared me so badly. I recently moved into an apartment in my hometown and the footsteps are here now. Things keep getting moved around too. I'm seeing the shadows again and it feels like I'll never be free of this thing. I don't know what to do, but I'm scared and terrified it'll always follow me. Storytime about how one best friend saved me from the other. The school I went to was a public school that never cared or paid attention to things that went on unless it was brought up to the school board directly. It was sophomore year of high school and I had class with both my girl and boy best friend. The girl's name is Aspen and the guy's name is Nick. Since our teacher didn't care, all three of us picked our seats together. I sat in the middle between Nick and Aspen. Nick and I had known each other since kindergarten, so I was pretty comfortable with his company. I never thought anything of it when he leaned his head on my shoulder or squished my face with his hands. However, about halfway through the year, things started to take a turn. During class, Nick would put his hands on my thighs or he'd lean on me and wrap his arms around my waist. This started to make me feel uncomfortable. We were seated in the back of the class, so no one noticed him making me uncomfortable except Aspen, who had no idea what was happening because I never alarmed her of it. I didn't say anything because part of me thought I was overreacting. After all, he was my best friend. One day, the class was empty because it was a free day, so we could all just hang out in the classroom or the commons. The teacher was God knows where, and Aspen had left to go print something for a different class in the printing room. I was left alone in the back of the classroom with Nick. For a few minutes, things were fine. I knew that Aspen would be back, so I just read my book. Then out of nowhere, I saw Nick stand up and shut the classroom door. I was scared when Nick shut the classroom door, but I tried to ignore him and pretended to keep reading my book. I quickly dialed Aspen's number on my phone and slipped the phone into my pocket. Before long, Nick got impatient with me and ordered me to take off my shirt. I told him no, and that's when he grabbed a fistful of my hair and tried to do it himself. After a minute of struggling with him, Aspen busted through the classroom door with one of our school guidance counselors. Turns out she hadn't really gone to the print room. She had noticed Nick touching me inappropriately and making me uncomfortable the previous day, so she went to the guidance counselor to get help. When I dialed her number, she was trying to convince the counselor, and when she realized what was happening, she put the phone on speaker to prove that I was in an unsafe situation. The counselor took Nick away, and later I found out that 7 other girls had come forward about him. They all said that he was harassing them, but since the school had no evidence, they couldn't expel him before. However, since the school counselor heard what was going on when Aspen put the phone on speaker during his attack on me, they were able to finally expel him. I'll always be thankful to Aspen for trying to help me when I felt like I couldn't do anything. I found out how my parents met and I need help. I'm back home for the week due to national holiday and I was going through some old photo albums. I found a picture of my mom aged around 8 to 10 and some dude who looked just like my dad. I took the picture to her and she confessed everything. It turns out the guy in the photo is my dad's older brother who was friends with my grandparents. My parents have known each other since my mom was 6 and my dad was 18. The story that they tell everyone is that they met when my mom was 18 and my dad was 29 at a party hosted by a mutual acquaintance. They started dating a few months later, got married when my mom was 25 and had me a few years after that. The truth is that they actually started dating when my mom turned 15 and because of this, her parents kicked her out of the house and cut contact with her. That means that my dad was 27 years old when he started dating her. We're in a Western country in Europe and we're all white. Growing up, my parents seemed to have a very healthy relationship, both had careers and my mom isn't financially dependent on him. I'm not close to my uncle or my paternal grandparents, but I'm considering giving them a call. I am so disgusted with everyone involved, but especially my dad. How can I look at him in the eye again knowing he probably grew my mom at a very young age? How do you even find someone you knew as a child attractive? The first thing I did was have a talk with my mom. I waited until my dad left the house, then we both sat down and had a really good talk. I asked her if she was safe, if she was happy, and if she felt loved and cared for in their relationship. She said she does to all of that. Then I asked her if, should things go wrong, she would have the money and means to get out of the relationship. She said she does. I expressed my concern about how the relationship started. She said she understood if I needed time to process it, and if I had any questions, she would answer them honestly. After my dad got home, I talked to him. I'm still having trouble with the idea of him and who I found out he is. I told him that I don't think our relationship would ever be the same again, and he said he understood. I asked him if he had any attraction towards children or teenagers and he said he doesn't. He said my mom was a kindred spirit sort of love. Last thing I did was give my uncle a call. He lives in a different country and we talked for a bit. He said I'm welcome to come visit any time and I might take him up on that. He was there for my dad through the beginning of the relationship, so I'll get some outside perspective. As for my grandparents, my mom said that her and my grandparents had mended their relationship a couple years before I was born. When I was around 13, my friend Sally and I were having a sleepover. I met her in the beginning of my first year at a new school. She was older than the other kids in our grade and was considered one of the popular kids, which is what I think drew me to her at first. It was your typical Friday night. We carpooled to her family's apartment after school. Her family was pretty religious and wouldn't let us watch horror movies, so we ended up watching Hunger Games instead. After the movie, Sally and I were hanging out in a room, listening to music and giving each other makeovers. By the end of it, we were looking much older than what we really were. Sally wasn't the most positive influence. Despite being my bestie at the time, she was manipulative and got off on putting me down. She also had a habit of talking to men online and lying about her age. She showed me some texts between her and a guy that she was talking to, which mostly consisted of him trying to convince her to meet up with him and the usual online creep stuff. According to him, he was 19. However, looking at the picture that he sent, this man was clearly at least 40 and looked like he lived in his mother's basement. Suddenly, we got a call from him. Sally answered without hesitation and I heard him say, "You're so pretty, why don't you come meet me?" Sally said she couldn't because she was spending the night with her friend. This sparked his interest. That's when he proceeded to try and ask us both to meet him. Sally, lacking any common sense, said yes. She planned for us to sneak out and walk 15 blocks to meet this creep in a deserted McDonald's parking lot. I didn't want to go, but Sally adamantly pleaded, saying that she didn't feel safe going by herself, so I agreed. We took our phones and I stuffed a kitchen knife in my bra in case something went wrong. The route we took was dark and deserted. When we got to the parking lot, we saw a beat-up Toyota Corolla. From what I could tell, there was more than one person inside. The man from the picture got out and left the door open behind him as he approached us. I turned on my flash to see, and I could tell he was on something. His eyes were so wide they looked like they were about to pop out of his head. I suddenly became conscious of how big he was. He was about 6'2" and around 280 pounds. Sally and I were both significantly smaller than him. That's when he reached down and grabbed Sally by the arm. His friends got out of the car and he invited us back to the car for booze and drugs. I quickly took my knife out, and when he saw it, he released her. I pulled Sally by the arm and ran faster than I ever had in my life. When we got to her home, we locked the doors, closed the blinds, and didn't sleep all night as we peeked out the window in case they followed us. To our dismay, this same Toyota was circling around her apartment building not once, not twice, but 3 times. After this, Sally and I stopped talking because she was mad at me for ruining her night. However, I think it was for the best. My boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We went to the same university, and after graduation, I started my catering business in our hometown. He got into computer systems, and we've both worked hard towards our careers. Everything seemed to be going great for us when my boyfriend came home one day and told me that he got a promotion. I was excited for him until he said that the position was in another state. He told me the pay is almost triple what he's making now, and he doesn't feel like he could pass it up. However, I've worked hard the last few years on my catering business in this city. I've got a ton of big clients who regularly order, and business is booming for me. Obviously, I'm going to have doubts about moving to another state and starting from scratch. This would also put me in a financially stressful situation, as my income would plummet until I planted roots in a new state with new clientele. I told him I wasn't sure if I'm comfortable moving and how it would impact my business. He assured me that he would take care of everything for us, including all the bills and any extra spending costs I needed for myself or my business. This sounded slightly better, but I was still torn. Over the last 5 years, we've talked a few times about the future, and he knows that I want more of a commitment eventually, but I've never tried to force him into it. That's when I brought up the topic of marriage and told him that I like some sort of commitment if I'm going to uproot my life for him. However, he didn't react well to this, and things got intense. I told my boyfriend that I needed some sort of commitment to start from scratch in another state. I explained to him how big of a change this would be for me and my business. This is when I mentioned the topic of marriage. I asked him that if I was to show him my commitment to his career with this move, how he would feel about committing to me with what I wanted. I told him I wouldn't rush him into marriage, but I would want the promise of it. He told me that he didn't feel comfortable with marriage and that he wasn't interested in it. That's when he said that the promise of taking care of us and my business costs should be enough for me to make the commitment to move. I disagreed because there's no telling how my business would do in another location, and it's taken me years to build it up to what it is now. We got into a heated argument and decided that we both need time to figure this out. I talked to my mom and sister about it, who sided with him, saying that the financial commitment he made to my business to start over is enough. However, now that I've had a few days to think, I'm wondering if he'll ever want to get married. Marriage is important to me, and he's known this early on in our relationship. He always told me that it would come in its own time, but it's been 5 years and I feel like he's not even remotely thinking about it. I'm torn and I don't know what to do. Am I wrong for not wanting to uproot my life and business for him without the commitment of marriage? This is why you might not want to move in with your best friend. After graduating high school, my bestie of 9 years and I decided to move in together. We both loved the same things, hung out nearly every day, and at the time I couldn't think of any reason why it wouldn't work out. When we first moved in, I had just gotten out of an abusive relationship that ended in assault. I sat her down and set some boundaries while explaining my reasons for them. The most important was no sleepovers. I didn't care if she slept with her boyfriend, but I didn't want him staying over, and if it was needed after a night of drinking or something, then she'd give me warning so I'd be able to make preparations for myself. At first, things were fine, but shortly after she had a messy breakup with her boyfriend, it was a downward spiral. She brought over a different guy every night. I hit my breaking point when she brought over 7 guys in one day and then disappeared for 3 days with one of them while ignoring my texts and phone calls. She kept blowing me off, so I disconnected the Netflix and all other streaming services that I provided. This is when she finally talked to me. I let her know that I didn't feel safe in my own apartment and that it either needed to end or I'd be moving out. I didn't like sleeping with my door locked and afraid to use the restroom at night. She agreed, but little did I know it was about to get 100 times worse when she got a new boyfriend who had it out for me. A few months after renewing our lease, we both started dating new guys. Hers seemed nice at first, but that illusion of kindness quickly dissolved. We lived on a smoke-free campus and he constantly smoked on our balcony. When I told him he couldn't do that or we'd get a fine, he told me to shut the F up. I was shocked. Around Christmas, he got evicted from his apartment and my roommate told him he could stay with us without even consulting me. He said it would only be until the beginning of the year and he'd paid a third of the bills. However, he didn't hold up to any of that. He laid around all day, eating my food, using my Netflix, and so on. When I texted my bestie about it, she told me it wasn't her problem and to confront him. I served him a 30-day notice and told him I'd take him to court if he didn't leave. He left that day and my bestie went with him while still paying rent at our place. 6 months later, they were back. He was pissed and began fat-shaming me, loudly wondering why my boyfriend was willing to date a whale like me. When I left him a note asking him to stop eating my food, he wrote, "Just trying to help you out with your diet," with a well sticker. The last straw was when I came home and he was picking my lock. Apparently, they'd both got into hard drugs and were pawning things off. I called my boyfriend and family and within a few days I was all moved out. I found out later they got evicted. I haven't talked to her since. I was basically an accident. When I was born, my 5 siblings were already in their late teens to early 20s and my parents were both 46. I was never abused in my childhood, but I was neglected and my entire family resented me. My parents didn't think they'd get pregnant again, but here we are. I was never looked after for by anyone and basically had to raise myself. No one ever played with me, spent time with me, or anything. They never bought me anything significant, it was always hand-me-downs. I realized this as I got older and I focused on myself. I thought that something was wrong with me because my siblings all received love and attention, so if I improved myself and did things for them, maybe they'd accept and love me too. I always got the best grades, made sure I did all my chores, always kept my room clean, and so on. However, nothing I did was ever good enough for them. We celebrated my father's birthday yesterday. My siblings and my mom wouldn't be around until we went out for dinner, so it was just me and him. I cooked him breakfast and lunch, did all the chores, and bought him a tie. I'm only 16 and on a budget. The most he came up with was a pathetic thank you. I could tell he wanted me to leave him alone, so I did. Finally, we all went out to dinner and they all had a good time while I sat in the corner ignored. This is how it usually is. When we got home, I broke down and started crying in front of them. I don't know what triggered it, but I started crying. Maybe it was because of them being so happy together. When they asked me what happened, I just blew up at them and told them how I felt about my entire childhood. I told them how they never showed me any kind of love or affection, among other things. I ended up by saying I wish they had aborted me if they hate me so much, or could have given me up for adoption so they could live their lives without me. My oldest sister started to say something, but I ran up to my room, closed the door, and went to sleep listening to music as they knocked on my door. When I faced my family the next day, the first thing they all did was give me a big hug, which honestly surprised me. It was the first time in years they showed me any affection. They also prepared me food, and after eating, we all talked. My oldest nephew, who was 2 years younger than me, stumbled across my post and showed it to my sister. They all apologized for how they treated me. They confirmed that I was an accident and none of them wanted to deal with another baby, so I messed up everything. But they didn't word it like that. Their reasoning was that I always did so well in life, so they were able to ignore me and pretend like I wasn't there, basically. They said they would do their best from now on to make me feel as part of the family. I thought about it long and hard and decided I'll try to form some kind of bond with them if it's even possible. Mainly, I'm going to live for myself and work towards my future.
When and if this generation gets older, we are going to be some strange old people. Our grandkids are going to run up to us and be like, Grandma, I heard you lived through a pandemic. How did it start? And we'll be like, well, Billy, turns out it all started because someone forgot to carry Madame Zeroni up the mountain. Oh my God, Grandma. Maybe they'll find us in the backyard with a shovel and be like, Grandma, what are you doing? I'm burying toilet paper so we can last through the winter. I'm going to wake up Billy at like 3 a.m. and be like, Billy, what color is this dress? It's gold and it's white. Billy, get out. Grandma, what religion are we? Billy, we don't need religion. Lil Nas X defeated the devil via lap dance, as the prophecy foretold.
hiệuชื่อว่าmùa sa rè xanh lẻ